Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Sunday. Hope we had a great time. I'm particularly excited with the topic we are looking at this evening. For me, it's very critical. Change management for HR professionals. Change management for HR professionals. So maybe I may say one or two things later on as the session progresses, but I'd like to introduce the speaker, our facilitator for tonight. His name is Olawiyi Ifeoluwa, and he's a senior human resource officer with Mwanga Limited, a debt recovery firm. Olawiyi Ifeoluwa has a couple of years experience. He has worked in places like Dobbs Products Limited. He also worked with Bradfield Consulting Limited. Then he worked also with Royal Kokina and Cocoa Research Institute of Nigeria. Ifeoluwa has his degree in biochemistry from the prestigious Howard University and is a consummate HR professional. He's also one of our own members here at HR Mentorship. Please, let's welcome Ifeoluwa Olawiyi as he takes us further into this journey. Change management for HR professional. Over to you, my brother.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Yem. Thank you. I really appreciate that. So good evening, everyone. My name is Olawiyi Ifeoluwa. I am senior HR officer at Mwanga Limited. So this evening, I will be taking us on change management for HR professionals, right? So we understand and we know that as HR professionals, we are the agents of change. We are the first point of contact when it comes to implementing change, and it doesn't matter what kind of change it is. From both departmental change to an organizational-wide type of change. When it comes to making changes in any environment we find ourselves, we are the first. We are the drivers of the change, right? So I will be walking us through some of the things I have on my slide now. Just to make us understand, how to even manage or understand the change process, right? I'll start my presentation here, by saying, there's a wise saying by Winston Churchill. He said, "To improve is to change, and to be perfect is to change often." Right. So, what is even the reason why we change? Why are we changing? Why do we sort change? Right. So if we want to become better at anything that we do, maybe process, want to even improve on how we deliver, right? Change is something that is very paramount. It's something that has to happen, right? But now, how do we even now manage the change? Because as an HR professional, you are one of the drivers of change anywhere you find yourself, right? So these are just the key highlights of the key things I'll be discussing with us this night. Understanding change management and organizational change, types of organizational changes, steps in change management process. How do you prepare your organization for change? How do you craft a vision and a process and a plan and goals for the change, right? Then how do you even implement the change? So when you are done implementing the change, then how do you even embed the change into the company culture and practicing? And the last thing here is going to be how you even review the progress and analyze the results of the change which you've implemented, right? And also the last set of things I'll be talking on today are the types of change management models, of which I'll be picking a few because I know if I have to talk about all, we might have to sleep here, but I'll just talk about a few ones that I think or that I feel it can be very effective and very applicable to us here, and also how to manage change effectively. When you're trying to make changes in your organization, maybe you even faced or you received maybe backlash or faced a form of resistance from the people you're trying to effect change for. How do you manage that kind of change effectively, right? So I'll be starting from understanding what change management and organizational change is. So this slide says change is the process of guiding to fruition, the earliest stages of conception, preparation through implementation and resolution. That is what change management basically means, right? So now you start your change management from planning. Why do you even want to change, right? And also from there, you move to the people you want to implement these changes for. Do they even know why these changes want to be made, right? You need to make them understand the reason for change. You just don't come with a change and say, oh, okay, this is the type of change I want to change. You need to make them understand why there is need for change. And also, you need to also do an analysis to understand maybe the kind of change you want to implement. Do these people, do they even have the skills? Do they have the right mindset to be able to adapt to these kind of changes, right? In my other slides, I will talk more about the various processes of the change management, right? And then also there's organizational change. So organizational change refers to the action the business takes to, to adjust to a significant component of the organization, right? And there are different kind of changes, just like I mentioned earlier. It might be the company culture you want to change, it might be the underlying technology or infrastructure you want to change, it might even be a corporate hierarchy you want to change, right? And it might also be the internal process. Maybe the way you guys have been doing things before, you do not like it. Maybe you work in an organization where you guys do a lot of paperwork. So most of your work is paper. You guys are not digital yet, and you want to implement the change to move your working system into a digital working system. It's not like paperwork we are educated, right? But at least you want to reduce paperwork by, let's say, 70 or 80%, right? That's a form of change, that you can drive. Then also it could be any other physical aspect. It could be any other physical aspect where you want to drive change, right? So change can be anywhere, right? And as HR personnel, we are the drivers of change, just like I said earlier, because now HR is bigger than just being an employee. Yes, we are employees, right? But at the same time, we are more like a business partner, right? Because everything that is needed for a business to succeed, almost everything, it still comes back to HR, right? For instance, you might not be the one in charge of running operations or even directing operations, but come to think of it, if your operations manager, the person that runs the operation, should leave now, it falls back on the table. You need to look for another operations manager to come in, right? So at the end of the day, you are tied to the business. You are tied to the business, and that is why you are a very big driver of change in any organization you find yourself as an HR personnel. So now, there are different types of organizational change. There's something we call adaptive changes, and there's something we call transformational changes, right? An adaptive change, it starts small, and then you move in a gradual stage. It changes an organization undertakes to evolve its process. Maybe you want to evolve your process, you want to evolve your workflows, you want to evolve your product, or strategies, right? This comes under adaptive kind of change. It starts small and it moves gradually. It moves gradually till you're able to then solidify this type of change. Just like I highlighted here, an example of this change is, hiring a new team member to address increased workload, or implementing work from home policy to attract more qualified candidates, or revamping your reward system. These kind of things, these kind of changes are not just changes that just happens once, right? It requires a lot of planning to even see how this thing will work, right? For instance, if you want to implement a work from home policy, this is a policy that you have to calm down, you have to think about it. Do we even have enough tools to implement this kind of thing, right? So these are classified or categorized under adaptive changes. And the other type of change here is transformational change. This type of change, they are on a larger scale compared to adaptive change. Maybe they are larger scale and scope, and they are often dramatic, and they are occasionally sudden. It could be in your organization before, you don't have an HR department before, but one day you have the organization just wakes up and say, oh, I want to establish an HR department in this organization. That's an example of a transformational change. For instance, you guys don't have a business development unit in your organization currently, but one day the CEO just wakes up, or you guys just have a meeting and say, oh, I think we need to bring in a business development person and create a business development department. That is a transformational change, right? Or maybe you want to even launch a product. Maybe there are different type of products that you guys sell before, but now probably you guys are into manufacturing, and you guys You make soap normally. It could be detergent, it could be bar soap. But now you guys are saying that there is more demand for maybe a petroleum jelly. And now you guys want to delve into producing petroleum jelly. That's a type of transformational change, right? It is not gathered, it is just a sudden change, and you guys have to just move in that direction. So now the next slide would be a change management process, right? Then because how do you manage change, right? From the beginning to the end. How do you manage change from the beginning to the end? The first thing you need to do in the change management process is you need to prepare the organization for change. It doesn't matter if you want to just implement change amongst maybe just a small subset of people, or you want to implement it in an organizational wide type of manner, right? If it's within a small subset of people, you need to get those people together, right? And you need to prepare them for the change that's coming ahead. It's like the states. The first step in preparing an organization for change must be identifying why the change is necessary. You need to identify why change is necessary. For instance, just like I said earlier, you guys have been doing a lot of paperwork. You guys don't have your work on a digital space. Your work is not digital. If you guys do a lot of paperwork now, you want to optimize your process into moving more into making your work more digital. For instance, so that means you want to reduce paperwork. You want to reduce paperwork by less than 70 or 80%, right? Now you need to prepare the organization for the change, right? And identifying why the change is necessary. Also, while identifying why change is necessary, you need to help employees understand the need for change and the desired result. There will be, when you want to implement the change, trust me, there will be a lot of why. A lot of people will come asking you why. Why do you want to implement the change? Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to do that? You need to be able to give them the answers they are looking for. Because if you do not give them an enough reason for that change to occur, you will meet a lot of people that would want to default, a lot of people that would not agree with you, a lot of people that want to act as stumbling block to the change you are trying to drive. So you need to be able to explain the reason for your change in a very simple and clear term. That is a key thing. All right. And the second step you need to take is you need to do an analysis of the organization, do an analysis on the current employee setup, and also investigating whether the current set of employee have what it takes for the desired change. Now, having what it takes for the desired change can be in form of skill sets. For instance, maybe you need a new accounting software package that you want to implement, right? You need to even find out the employees we have on ground. Are they capable to use this software? Are they skilled enough to use this software? Because if you are trying to implement the software use, and these people that you want to implement software use for, they are not capable of that software. It doesn't mean that it's more like you're setting them up for failure, right? So you need to find out if the concept of employees, if they have what it takes to adapt to this change. Or for instance, you want to implement a system or maybe a system of integrity, right? Or because maybe your organization is an organization that a lot of things do go wrong in terms of maybe some things even do go missing, right? But now you want to put your feet on the ground as an HR person and say, oh, this is what I'm saying. This integrity has to be ingrained in our company culture. Now, if we catch anyone doing this, this is what we will do, right? For instance, so that means people that do not have that kind of mindset, people that are not naturally people of integrity, they are designed to fail, under that type of change, right? So you need to even do an analysis to find out whether the current set of employees have what it takes to adapt to the desired change, right? It is also important that key employees buy into the idea of change, as they will play a major role in helping to implement and fix the change. One thing I've always done in my current organization, one thing I always do when I want to drive a change is, and I always try to bring the top guys in with me on this change. I always try to stress myself to explain the need for the change to them first, because when these top guys, it could be management, it could be the leaders of every other department, So when these guys buy into your idea of change, it is easy for them so it trickles down to them to help you drive change. You cannot drive change yourself. that is one key thing I'm very certain. As an individual, only one person cannot drive change. You need people to be on your side. You need to win top guys. You need to win people on your side to understand the need for that change. It's when you want people, in the organization on your side to understand the need for the change. They're the ones that now help you to drive it amongst, the other employees. The other lesser employees, right? The ones that are not up to the top guys in position. And they are the ones that help you look out for the ones that are probably defaulting from the change you are trying to implement. So that's one thing I've always done, and so far so good. It has always been of help, right? It has always helped me to meet less or little resistance. As long as the top guys agree, or if it's in a case where they do not agree, I might have to have a rethink, or maybe present that change in a different form of way, right? But the top guys need to agree, they need to be with me on that change, because they are the ones that will help me further drive down the change. Just you as an HR personnel, you cannot drive change yourself. You need people on your side to help you drive this change in your organization. Now, the next step has to be crafting a vision and planning for the change, right? So a thorough and realistic plan for change must be designed, and it should contain strategic goals for the change, KPI for measuring the change, how success will be measured, right? Project stakeholders and teams who oversees tasks of implementing change, project scope, discrete steps and actions included in the project, roadblocks that can arise during implementation process that will require agility and flexibility to overcome. So now you want to implement change, right? But you need to set certain KPIs to know whether the change you are trying to implement, these KPIs will help you measure the level of change you try to implement. For instance, you're trying to move your system into a more digital system, right? Maybe last month you guys had 50, 60, or 70% of your work as paperwork. But this month, you guys have been able to reduce that to maybe like 30%. That's a change. And you're determined you've been able to effect a change. So you need to devise a way to measure your change, right? And that is where setting your key performance indicator for measuring the change, that is where it comes in, right? And also you need to craft a plan on how you want to implement the change, right? So this stage is just the planning stage, the stage where you come up with various methods, procedures. What are the things you need to do to even put these changes in place? And at each stage, what are the things that is expected of everyone, right? And also, this is the stage where you plan the key role of everyone in the change. For instance, you as a person, you devise your change plan, right? You also need to bring in people to say, okay, at this point of the change, this is the person that will help me drive change in this social department. This is the person that will help me drive change as regards this social people. So now this is where you identify your co-change drivers. Your co-change drivers, right? So now this is where you craft and design your vision and plan for the change. And also this is where you anticipate any form of roadblock that can come, that can hinder the change you are trying to implement. You need to be a visionary. You need to be able to see ahead what will be the issues, for the change you are trying to implement, right? So now the next thing is change implementation. After you've created a vision for the change, you've created your process for the change, the key things you will be needing to implement your change. Now you've even did a survey to make people understand, why that change is important. You made your survey to know whether people have the right skill set or the right mindset for the change to be carried out. Now the next step is implementing the change, right? So just like I said on this slide, after the vision and plan for change has been crafted out, the next thing is to follow the highlighted procedure to implement the change. So now these are the procedures in which you've highlighted during your vision and planning stage. So now you are trying to implement this change, right? The change managers must be ready to empower employees to take necessary steps needed to achieve the goal for the change. Now you've seen that there are people or there are employees under you that they don't have the right skill sets to carry out this change you're trying to implement. As the change manager, you must be ready to empower these employees to have the right skill set, the right mindset to be able to take this necessary step to achieve the goals of the change, right? And it's also key to keep reminding the employees of the reason why the change has to be effected. So when you're trying to effect change, it's not a thing of I've told everybody why we have to effect change, and you just want to take a back step that okay, I've shared discussed with everyone. No, when you're trying to effect a change, I would advise, or I would say that if you can maybe create a vision, like a saying, right? Maybe something that when people go around, they sit on the walls, that keeps their mind, that puts it in their mind that okay, we're trying to achieve a form of change, and this form of change we're trying to achieve. I would even say if it's possible for you to craft it into the vision and mission of the organization, any form of change you want to implement. It's possible for you to craft it into the vision and mission of the organization that maybe once a week or twice a week, you're having a meeting and everyone is deciding the change you want to implement. It is a good thing. It is a good thing. People they need to be reminded constantly on why, and the reasons for change. For instance, you work in an organization where a lot of people not put on their ID cards. Trust me, moving from that to people putting on their ID card, it's not going to be something very easy because they are not used to it. A lot of them, their mind is not even there. A lot of them, they will probably tend to forget their ID card at home because there is no mechanism in place that always enforces them to put on their ID card. Of which is that now I'm bringing a case, I'm bringing an example of something I've had to face, in one of the organizations I've worked for. Everyone there had an ID card, but they were the habit of not putting on their ID card, right? It's not going to be, so I discovered and I realized that it's not going to be an easy thing to put in place, right? Because a lot of people always come up with different excuses. I'm talking of a number of employees that are more than 50, right? So this is not going to be an easy thing to make sure that everyone will, always put on the ID card. But first of all, just like I said, the first thing is for you to even bring in the top guys on the side, all right? So when top guys, the managers, the management team, they are always putting on the ID card. Then now, as the manager putting on your ID card, you would be able to challenge people on your team if they are not putting on the ID card, right? So now, so another thing is, so just like I said, so you need to keep reminding the employees, on why the change has to be effected, right? A lot of them will still keep coming up with excuses of why my ID card is not my neck at this period, why this, why that. But maybe you guys have a meeting, maybe like twice a week, right? That reinforces that change of putting on the ID card. But in my own case, that was what I did, right? So every Monday meeting that we're having, if I see people not putting on the ID card, I call them out. Then also I try to remind people at those meetings, right, on why we have to put on our ID card. So it's key that you keep reminding employees on why that change needs to be effective, right? And now the second to the last thing is embedding the changes in the company culture. Now you've been able to achieve a degree of success when trying to implement the change. Maybe you've been able to agree, maybe you've been able to achieve, let's say, 30%, 40%, 50%, or maybe even 70%, right? Of level of change you want, or level of change you aspire to be at, right? So the next thing will be to embed that change in the company culture, right? Just like I said earlier, for instance, you work in an organization where the level of integrity is really low. You have a lot of people in the system that try to cheat the system, that try to beat the system, right? So now that you've tried to implement this form of change, right? You try to make sure that everyone in the organization are high integrity levels. The next thing for you to do will be to implement that integrity as part of the company culture. So now when you put that part of the company culture, probably as you are reading the employee handbook to the new employees that are coming in, or even during your onboarding process, it is there as part of the culture. So anyone coming in, knowing fully well that naturally I'm not a person of integrity. Before the person comes into the system to mess that system up, they either leave or they adapt. And now adapting means they have to become people of integrity by force, because this is what the company culture is saying, right? So just like I said on this slide, your feedback from the change results could be taken to modify this change strategy till it becomes better. If there are feedback, so feedback could be negative, it could be positive. But if the feedback, they are negative form of feedback, right? You can maybe remodify some of the little things in change you're trying to implement, right? You can modify some of these things, and we put it back into the company culture. But if there's no need for you to modify this changes that you're trying to implement, then yes, it should be part of the company culture, right? So after the change becomes solidified, in order not to revert back to the status quo, the change has to be embedded in the company's culture, right? You have to embed that change in the company's culture. And as a result of this, it becomes a company-wide policy and helps preventing backsliding into old ways. Now you've been able to implement integrity as part of your company culture, right? Everyone that comes in knows that the company is big on integrity, right? So anyone that decides to go against it, because now it's now a company-wide policy that everyone in the organization has to obey and they have to work by, right? So now if you go against this, you know, so now the person understands that they are going against the company policy, right? So by embedding your changes into the company culture, you prevent backsliding, into old ways, into ways which things used to be done, right? And also, after you've been able to embed it into the company culture, the next thing for you to do is review your progress and analyze your results, right? A change postmortem should be carried out to determine the success or failure of the change, or whether the result is mixed. A mixed result means the change was neither good nor bad, right? It's a mixed result, right? But also you need to determine the success and failure of the change. If the change has maybe like 70% success and 30% failure, then that means the change was a success, because I mean the success rate was more than the failure rate. But the failure rate is higher than the success rate. This is where you might want to revisit some of the things you did, during the change, and maybe if you had done something different, maybe the results would have been different, right? And just like I said, this can also offer insight and lessons that can be leveraged in future change efforts. What are the things? For instance, you achieved 70% now. Maybe in the future you're trying to even see if it's possible to achieve 90% of the change. So this period is where you analyze your change process, you reanalyze everything that led up to the process of the change. And maybe if there are things or processes you could have improved to get a better form of change, right? So the next thing I'll be doing is I'll be walking us through some form of change management models. We have a lot of change management models, trust me. But for me, I'll be picking three, which I'll be talking about here, right? And those three change management models are models that I've seen a bit of it work, right? And I feel it's a change management model that can be replicated, by almost anyone, right? It can be replicated by us as HR practitioners, right? So these three key management models are the models I'll be talking about tonight. Just like I said, there are different change management models, and they have been experimented and provided in depth to the organization's change. However, you might have to modify your model to suit your organization type. Change. The most effective form of change model, to me, the first one I'm talking about here is the Lewin model. The Lewin model. This model is an unfreeze. You unfreeze whatever process you've been carrying out, right? You implement change, then you refreeze the process, right? And like it says here, it favors when you support professional management on the need to make organizational and team-wide changes, right? So this kind of change management model, there's a way you be doing things. You want to implement change, and when you are done implementing the change, you solidify the process, right? An organization that I know that has tried this change form of change management model is Netflix, right? But after this presentation, you can just maybe Google or read up Netflix Lewin organization change management model, right? You will see more of how they were able to implement it, what were the things that they changed and everything. But I'll just give you a brief overview of what they did, of what they've tried, at least, at different stages, right? I'll just give you a brief overview, but my overview cannot be as comprehensive as you going online yourself to even check the credits, what were the things they changed from, how were they able to implement it, right? So Netflix started in the year, I think 97, 98, thereabouts. I started as a DVD rental company, right? Started as a DVD rental company. And what were they doing? It's an online platform where you can always go to and rent your DVD, it was a pay per use kind of rental, right? So you pay and they rent it out to you. They send it to you probably in the mail, or so they can just mail it down to you and say, okay, you paid for your DVD. Now we are giving you this, right? But at the point in time, as technology was advancing, they were also advancing, right? The next stage they now moved into, it was instead of doing it as a pay per view kind of system, they now upgraded it into a monthly subscription kind of system, but it was still DVD rental, right? But so instead of you paying for DVD rental, now you're subscribing for a month. And under that 1 month, you go on their website or on their app, that any movie or anything you want to see, right? You search for it, and if they have it, right, they'll just mail it down to you for you to watch anyone you want to see, as long as it is within a month's time frame. So after a month, your subscription is expired. This was how Netflix started then, right? But as time was moving, as technology was changing, there was need for them to change their business model. There was need for them to also involve or make use of technologies, in whatever it is they were doing, right? So from being a DVD rental company, they moved to become a streaming. They moved to having a streaming option rather, right? So instead of you just renting out DVDs, and just watching, you paid your monthly subscription already, right? So they moved into having a streaming platform where it's still the same, it's still similar to DVD, but the only difference now is when you subscribe for a month, instead of having to rent DVD, now you go ahead and stream. You can stream online now, right? And also, as technology was advancing, right, they were able to scrap the parts where you rent DVDs, and it became a streaming platform, basically, where you can go, and stream movies, right? From there, they started having apps. Before Netflix, they don't even have when it started, they didn't have apps. They didn't have iOS apps. They didn't have Android apps, right? But it was just a website where you can just go to stream. But as technology was advancing, they were advancing. They were able to bring out their own apps. They were able to sell their own product, right? And so that was how Netflix was able to implement changes over time. You see that aside from a DVD model, right? But aside from a DVD model where you were renting per view, right? But they saw that there was need to make a change, right? And the change was to make it into a monthly subscription kind of platform where you subscribe monthly, and any movie you want to see, you search for it and you request for it, and they send it down to you, right? So when that changed, when it became effective, they fixed it, right? And it was what they continued for a while. As technology was advancing, they saw the need to unfreeze their business model again and introduce a different form of thing, right? Which was streaming, option, rather. So now, when they saw that the streaming option worked, they refreezed it, and it was there for a while. You go on their website, you're able to stream. At the same time, you were still able to borrow the DVDs, right? But as time went by, they scrapped the borrowing of DVD option, and it was basically a streaming platform, right? Then from there, they saw the need to even create their own software, right? To bring out their own apps, and which was one thing they later moved to, right? So Netflix, they made use of Lemon's organizational change model, to overcome their customer new trends and enhance productivity. As the company replaced the old procedures with new strategies to accommodate the new demands of customers, right? So the next change model management I'll move to is McKinsey, right? So this one is a more complex change model management. I might not be able to talk extensively on how McDonald's use this to manage, their changes in app, right? But there are several key things that are important in this form of change management model, right? The first thing is strategy. Second thing is structure. Third thing is system. The fourth thing is shared values. The fifth thing is style. The sixth thing is staff. And the seventh thing is skills, right? So this kind of change, if you want to implement this kind of change, the first thing is you need to come up with strategy for the change, right? You need to come up with strategy for the change. Just this is more like the planning, developing the different kind of processes that even required to carry out the change, right? The next thing you need to look at or analyze is the structure of the change. How do you implement to make this change? Is it a change you want to just make once, or do you want to structure it? Do you want it to be a bit by bit form of change? Do you want it to be a progressive kind of change, right? Then also the system. What kind of system is it? This is where analyzing what your the current employees you have in the system, what they're able to do. This is where analyzing them comes in, analyzing their skill set, knowing what they're capable of and what they're not capable of, right? This is where it comes in. It comes on that system. And nothing is shared values. Shared values is a lot of employees are trying to implement changes for. Do they even agree to this change? Are they seeing things the same way, right? This is where this comes under shared value, right? The next thing is staff. So the next thing is staff, right? Analyzing, do we even have the right kind of staff, right, to carry out this form of change you are trying to implement. Then the last thing is skill set. Do these employees, do they have the skill set to carry out this form of change we are trying to implement, right? So this model helps understand how these things are, how they are interrelated with each other, so that the weaknesses can be identified, right? If an organization that I know that uses this kind of change management model, most times they want to implement change in the McDonald's, right? McDonald's is very popular for using the McKinsey model, and just like I've said before earlier, if you want to know more about how McDonald's uses the McKinsey 7S model system to implement change, you can just do a little bit of read up on them, right? It might be a bit bulky, right? But if this is a model which you would like to use to implement change, you can read up on how they were able to use the systems to implement change nationwide, right? And the last form of change management model, which for me I feel is the most effective form of change management model, is the ADKAR change management model, right? In the ADKAR change management model, the first thing about ADKAR change management model is there needs to be an awareness for change, right? You wake up or as an organization, you just come together and say, oh, okay, we need to change. We need to make a change in us, right? That is you creating an awareness for need to change. So now there's a need to change, and an awareness for that need to change is being created. And this is also the stage where you do a bit of carrying along every employee. You guys as management team, you've discussed on why you need to change, and now it needs to be communicated effectively to the other employees, right? This awareness of need to change is the first thing you carry out, as an organizational-wide kind of structure, right? You need to become aware of the need to change, right? And the next thing is desire to change. This change management model, you cannot jump one acronym to the other, right? Before creating desire to participate, in the change, right? You need to create the awareness first. A lot of people need to buy into your idea of change. They need to buy into your idea. So when they are done buying into your idea of change, that is when the desire for change comes in, right? For instance, every year Microsoft, right, they release a new form of Microsoft 365. They release it. So there's the 2020 version, the 2021 version, the 2022 version, right? But the thing is this: an Office 365 of let's say maybe 2009 or 2010 cannot do what an Office 365 of 2021 can do. Now every year they feel the need to always improve on their features, right? A lot of people can just maintain and be like, oh, but the one I was using before, it was not having any hiccups, there was nothing wrong with it, I was not percent challenged with it. So why do I feel the need to change, right? But because there are new features that they are adding on a yearly basis, now they need to make you see why you need to change, right? For instance, there was a time that OneDrive was not incorporated into the Microsoft 365 product. Like there was time you do not have a drive, you do not have option of a drive on the Microsoft 365. right? But later on, when they wanted to include the options of you using a drive into Microsoft 365, right? That was when they created the awareness, for the need to change. So a lot of people were using Microsoft Office before and it was working fine for them. But now they want to bring out a new product, right? And now they have to create awareness for the need to change. Now the change they're trying to implement there is they're trying to incorporate a cloud, the OneDrive cloud into the Microsoft 365. So now that's the change they are making. So they're creating an awareness for you, so you know the need for that change to be carried out. Then another thing is the other thing is desire to change. So when you know that OneDrive cloud is present on Microsoft 365, now there will be a desire, there will be a need for you to want to change. You also want to participate in change because you want to have access to that OneDrive cloud system for you to even save your files, so that it's not a thing of, oh, I can only work on my files when I'm in the office. What happens when you are connected to a remote and that remote access? Maybe you're working from your house, you're working from maybe a laptop from home, right? So now you know that you connecting to that drive, you can easily access everything that's present on that drive from your house. You don't need to be in the office to work on this thing. So now, knowing that these are the things that stand to gain from migrating to maybe a Microsoft Office of 2009 to a Microsoft Office of 2021, right? Now you will feel the need and desire to want to change, right? So the next step in ADKAR's change management model is knowing your knowledge on how to change. You need to know how to make the changes, right? Now, this is more about empowering your employees or empowering people so that they have the knowledge of how to even implement the change. Just like I mentioned earlier, they're trying to implement the use of SH3. They're trying to implement the use of let's say SH50 in the accounting department, but a lot of people don't know how to use Sage, right? So now you need to maybe conduct a training or even teach your people how to use Sage 50, because if they do not know how to use Sage, I mean, there's no way they will be able to work with it, right? So now you need to give people or the employees, you need to give them the knowledge on how to even change, right? The next one is ability to implement required skills and behavior. This also, in a way, similar to giving your employees the knowledge on how to change. You need to be able to implement required skills and behaviors, with the change, right? But the last thing is reinforcing and sustaining the change. Now you've made a change, right? People are starting to change, and you're starting to say that, okay, this change is now at a 60% success rate, right? Now this reinforcement is where you take people's feedback to know how far the success rate of your change has gone, right? If there are any feedbacks on issues that employees are facing or people are facing, right, that is not making the change effective enough, this is where you're expected to maybe make a little few adjustments, right? And also, if you say that the change you've been trying to drive or implement, the success rate is really high, right? You also reinforce and sustain the change, trying to improve on the processes of the change so that the change comes here to stay, right? So because that's the essence of the change. You're trying to make a change so that this is the new level, this is the new way things are being done now, right? So you need to be able to reinforce and sustain the change. So like I said earlier, using the Microsoft 365 product as an example of how Microsoft, have been able to implement ADKAR change management model. Microsoft generally the change management model, they use the ADKAR change management model to implement changes, right? And just like I said, Microsoft used the ADKAR model primarily to influence buying and diagnose common barriers to customer success and adoption, right? And this also helped Microsoft improve customer success, right? So yes, so this was the key thing. This change management model was the model Microsoft engaged. This was the model they used, right, from time to time to maybe if they want to sell a new product, if they want to develop any type of product and they want you to desire that product, right? This is a way for them. This is the way they use to manage that kind of change, right? So the next thing I'll be moving to now is managing change effectively, right? But the first thing I'll be talking about this evening is causes of employees' resistance to change. Why are employees or why are people resistant to change, right? The first issue on employees or people generally being resistant to change is this: when there's lack of training and knowledge on the part of change driver. You as a change driver, you need to understand the whole concept and idea of the change. You need to understand the concept. If you do not understand the whole concept and idea of the change, I mean, it's a case of how do you give what you don't have, right? It's a case of how do you give what you don't have. If you do not have an in-depth knowledge of what the change is about, what the goal of the change is, how to implement the change, right? You would not, trust me, there will be resistance to the change because this first thing I'm saying here, it affects a whole lot of things. It affects the way you communicate change to other people. And also when people can spot that you don't know what you're saying, right? A lack of trust comes in. A lack of trust comes in because people would not be able to trust it because what you're even saying, you're not even sure what you're saying. You don't even understand what you're saying very well, right? So the first thing is lack of training and knowledge on the part of the change driver. As the change driver, you need to understand the change well. You need to understand the goal of the change. You need to understand the processes that are required to carry out the change, right? So these are key things you need to do on your own part. And also, it's not just down to you as an HR person. You know, I said if you want to effectively manage change, you need to start from the higher up, right? You need to start from the higher up. And another thing I did not mention in most of my slides is this. It is advisable for you to implement change in a stage-by-stage process. It's advisable for you to implement change in a stage-by-stage process. For instance, you want to implement 3 or 4 types of changes, right? It is better for you to implement it in a stage-by-stage process. Don't just implement everything once. It might be a lot, for people to assimilate it one by at once. But make sure that your change is there in a different stage process, right? You know that okay, the first stage you want to implement this, and after you've seen a few of such of things, you are introducing the second stage, and the third stage, and the fourth stage, right? Implement your changes in phases. Don't just bombard people with a whole lot of changes once, right? It's not advisable. The next thing that causes resistance to change is skill gaps. Yes, you are trying to implement changes, but the change you're trying to implement, a lot of employees do not have the skill to even carry out that change. Trust me, there will be resistance to that kind of change. For instance, just like you're trying to move from a paperwork system to a digital system, right? And a lot of employees that work in your organization, they do not even know how to use a laptop. You have problem. You will have problem because the reason why a lot of them are even used to doing a lot of paperwork because they do not know how to use the system in the first place, right? And that is where an issue will arise. So if these employees are not being taught on how to use system, they will not be able to move to a digital system effectively, right? So you need to look at the skill gap. The skill gap is one of the reasons why employees do have resistance towards change. Another thing is poor communication and engagement. When you want to communicate the need and reason for change, you need to be mindful of how you communicate it and how you engage employees. How you communicate it is really, really important. If you do not communicate change well, the employees would not get the reason why you want to make the changes. And trust me, if they do not get the reason why that change needs to be made, there will be no desire for making that kind of change, right? So you need to make sure you communicate the reason for change well. You need to make sure your communication is really good, and also how you engage them, right? Yeah, just like I said, it's going to be advisable when you're trying to implement a change that it even becomes one of the vision and mission statements of the organization. That it becomes something that maybe when you're having a meeting, people are already reciting it and saying it over and over again. So it keeps ringing in their head that okay, this is the change you are trying to implement, right? Another thing is lack of trust. Maybe over time, you've tried to implement a type of change and it has failed woefully, right? Maybe you try to do it maybe once, twice, or even 3, 4 times, right? Over time, lack of trust will set in. Lack of trust will set in. The employees would not trust the decision or the They will not trust the decisions of the management, right? They will not trust you, your decision as a change driver. So lack of trust can lead to employee resistance to change, right? Also, there's something called fear of the unknown. I think a lot of people suffer from this fear of the unknown because you've been used to a particular way of doing things. Now you do not know how you moving away from that status quo will be like. You don't know the results that will come out of you moving away from that status quo, right? So a lot of people do have what we call fear of the unknown. So fear of the unknown can lead to employee resistance to change. Another thing is poor timing. If you're timing, so you need to be able to time the change you want to effect. You need to be able to time it well. If the timing of your change is wrong, you'll meet a lot of resistance, to the type of change you want to implement, right? For instance, they're trying to implement a system, maybe where you want to implement a commission-based system, where when people do a kind of work, maybe you're able to achieve a form of target, receive a form of commission, right? But it's coming at a time maybe where the company cannot even afford to pay the employee salary regularly. So implementing this that type of change might not be possible. It might not work. There will be a lot of resistance to change. And this resistance can even come from the higher ups that are supposed to help you to drive the change, right? So you need to be able to time your changes very well, right? So now I've talked about why employees are resistant to change, right? So the next thing I'll be going to is how to overcome the resistance to change. How to overcome resistance to change. The first thing here is this: change drivers need to gain more knowledge about the change, which which solve the problem of which solve the first problem on my previous slide, right? When the change drivers do not have enough knowledge about the change, they don't have enough knowledge on how to go about the change, they don't have enough knowledge of the goals of the change. This is a big problem, right? So the change drivers, they need to gain more knowledge about the change. As the first change driver, as an HR person, you need to be able to pick the top guys which you want them to buy into the idea of changes first. You need to be able to pick them more extensively on the change. Make them understand why the change has to be made, the goals of the change, the objectives of the change, right? So when these guys understand the change process, when they understand it in and out, right, they're able to communicate effectively to every other person on their team. So the change drivers need to gain more knowledge about the change, right? They need to understand the reason for the change, the objectives of the change, and the processes required to carry out the change. Another thing is overcoming the opposition by finding out why they do not believe in the change. Just like I said, a lot of people, there's something called fear of the unknown. But it is, when people are resistant to change, you might not necessarily find out why they are resistant to change immediately. So one thing that is key. So one thing that is key. So one thing that is key when employees are trying, when you are trying to drive a change is when you see people, right? When people are being resistant to the change you are trying to drive. One thing that is key to overcoming that kind of change is you need to overcome the opposition. And how do you overcome the opposition? Those people that are resistant to that change need to find out why they are resisting the change, right? And this is more. Presents itself more like a feedback session, right? A lot of people are resistant to change. You need to sit them down why they're resistant to change. You're trying to find out maybe there's a way you can come and even help them make that change effectively, right? So this second point is you need to overcome the opposition by finding out why they do not believe in the change. Listen to their concerns and possibly alleviate such in a timely manner. Listen to why they are not open to the changes, right? And also, if there are ways you can help them, maybe some of them might even have skill gaps. Some of them, it might be maybe because of their age, they feel that they cannot work in that kind of way. There are a lot of reasons why people, they do not believe the change or they don't want to they don't want to participate in that change, right? So you need to listen to them, find out what they are, resistant to the change, and find out ways which you can, help them in a timely manner, so you know how you're able to solve their problems, right? So another thing is effectively engaging and communicating the change to employees. Now you've been able to educate your change drivers, right? You also need to monitor them to know how they're communicating that change to other employees, right? You need to find out how they are communicating the change to other employees, which is key. Because when you are trying to implement changes, communication is key. How you communicate the change is really important. When you're communicating the change, no detail of the change should be left out. Is there a case where you tell Mr. A and Mr. B something, and Mr. A will decide to leave out a certain type of information from the change you're trying to implement? No, he has to be thorough. He has to be exactly the way it's coming from you, right? So communication is a very key thing when you're trying to effect change, right? So effectively engaging and communicating the change to employee is a big way for you to overcome resistance to change, right? Also, you need to implement the change in several stages. After I said it earlier, right? When you're trying to, you know what your long-term goal is. When you're trying to implement change, there will be a long-term goal for the change, and there will be a short-term goal for the change, right? So now you know what your long-term goal for the change is, right? It's better for you to start implementing that change in several stages, unless it's a form of transformational change, that you need to just implement it once. It has to be a sudden form of change. But it's not a transformational change, it's an adaptive form of change. We need to implement that change in several stages, right? You need to come in several stages to implement the change. For instance, you want to teach people on how to use the particular type of software, right? The first stage of implementing that kind of change will be for you to even train them first, train them on how to use that kind of software. Let them use the software for a while, and after a while, you even conduct a competency test for them to know how competent people are according to this form of software, right? So you need to implement change in several stages. The last thing is equipping every employee with skills and mindset that might be required for the change. When you are trying to drive home change, you found out that okay, there's a skill gap. A lot of my employees do not have the skills for me to be able to effectively, implement this change, right? You need to equip each employee with skills that they would need to be able to carry out that sort of change, right? And also the mindset. The mindset has to change. The mindset has to change. You have to be able to change their mindset. For instance, someone that worked with paper all their life, their mindset needs to change, knowing that the world is going digital. The world is going digital, and they also have to move with the world, right? Imagine Netflix is still stuck with their mode of operation in 1999 or 1998, and by now they are still renting DVDs. Do you think they will be a successful organization as they are today? Not possible, right? So as technology is advancing, as times are changing, you need to be able to also change the mindset of your employees. You need to be able to give them the required mindset for them to carry out the form of change they want to carry out effectively, right? So thank you guys. That will be all from my end. Sadesh, are you there?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Fantastic session, very engaging, very enlightening. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, would you like to ask any question? Please, if you raise your hand, we'll recognize you. And if you also like to maybe share your experience with respect to change management in your workplace, either current or previous, feel free to also share. All right. Okay. Let's see if we will have any question tonight or any comments or any additional contribution or input. We are waiting. So people are thanking you. I saw a lot of ovation also via the emoticons, okay, the emojis. All right, thank you. Olafinion says, thank you for this insightful presentation. Okay. All right, Ajara says, thank you so much. Fantastic presentation. All right, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. It has really been a long day. Today is a double header. Okay, back-to-back 2 presentations. we were really committed to ensuring that this year we end it on a high. So I can see Dominic hands up. I'm happy. Dominic, you may please unmute and maybe ask your questions or share your comments. Hello, Dominic.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, I really want to recommend the facilitator for this wonderful facilitation. It was indeed a great one. I actually learned a lot on organizational change. Thank you so much, and I pray for much more increase beyond human imagination at every aspect. That is also I learned a lot from this, so I'm able to capture each and every lesson that have been put forth here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dominic Yang, for that encouraging word and feedback, which aptly sums up today's presentation. As always, we will share the link shortly tonight on the YouTube channel so that we can watch it again and also share with our friends and colleagues. Please share this with all your team members. I also see a hand up, Omolayo Lawal. You have been recognized. You may please kindly unmute and share your comments or ask your questions as the case may be.
All right, thank you, Mr. Yemi. Good evening. And thank you, Ifeoluwa. You've done a great job. Even though I joined late, I tend not to miss training. Even if I've listened to the same topic, I want to hear it again, know what is happening, and then look for ways I can add value or share my own experience. Without taking much of our time, I just like to contribute. You've done a good job. And in fact, there was something I screenshot. Let me be sincere, because I want to discuss that with my people. It's just something that crossed my mind. Okay, so my contribution is this change that we're talking about. Sometimes it is not even the staff that are resistant to the change. Sometimes the change itself doesn't happen among the management. And when that doesn't happen among the management, there's no how you can influence or tell other people. There's no how they will not be resistant to it. I'll give you an example. I'm not going to mention any company now, but I've worked in a company. Okay, let me just say Chinese company. I'm not going to mention name precisely. There are many Chinese companies in Nigeria. And I had to resign because it wasn't going to happen. You cannot be the same counselor, yeah, after welfare, and then you still be the same person as an HR to give out strict sanctions or dish out unfair treatment, even when an employee is sick and still have to come to work. So that kind of thing, it starts from the management itself. We want change to happen. It's very easy to dish out, oh, we want you to move from this level to this. We want you to start doing this. We want progress. We want growth. We want so many achievements and objectives are highlighted. But the truth is, if the management itself, is there a way that the management is going to have a review? Are they willing to do what it takes for a change to actually occur? Because it's easier said than done. So we can follow all these steps through and there will not be a change at the long run. You know why? Because the foundation is shaky. Because the foundation itself, it's weak. And then you want people to trust and they'll be like, oh, at whose expense? Even when you're trying to help the employees, when you're trying to do something good or the organization as a whole, let's move from where we used to be. Where we move from that, there's going to be better incentives, there's going to be better welfare, and you just have to put in your effort, contribute. But at the long run, how effective is it? So what I'm just trying to say is this topic is good. It helps employee and when it helps to eradicate the resistance. But my emphasis is on the management. How would the management change itself? Without the foundational change, all this will come back to 0 point. Thank you.
Yeah, Thank you so much. Thank you, Omola. You know, just like I said earlier, right? So your top guys, the management, the leaders of your system, they are very, very key, you know, in help you drive change, because one person cannot drive change alone, really. You cannot just drive change alone. You need people to come on it, and need people to be inside. And if management, if they are not helping your kids, if they're not helping your mother, it's going to be really hard or really tough for you to drive change, right? So, but one thing, so before I even present cases, you know, before my CEO or before you know the organizations I've worked with, one style or one method I've always tried to engage with or employ is this. I try to meet with other managers first, right? I try to meet with other managers, seek their opinion or you know their idea on every type of thing I'm trying to implement. Find out what they want, what they want to say about it. Find out how they say it best, right? You know. So when I found out opinion from manager A, manager B, manager C, right? So if the opinion, if it is similar, me knowing now that a lot of my other managers agree to what I'm saying, then that is when I'm able to now straight open in a management meeting. And because we've had other managers agree before the meeting, it comes down to a vote of confidence. So okay, I say, you know, A say, so most times that's the way I've tried to implement any form of change I want to implement. So I try to get other managers to agree with me before I even trade open in a management meeting or anything. So
thank you so much. You know, Ifeoluwa, there's this recurring thing in the Nigerian ecosystem,
yeah,
and the HR ecosystem, where sometimes we, the HR, sometimes appear helpless, sometimes hopeless with respect to our management team, especially owner-managed organizations or even big organizations that they have a domineering or a dominant maybe CEO or executive member of staff. The truth is, when we want to change, we are not changing for changing's sake. We are changing for the benefit of all the stakeholders. Okay. But there's sometimes one or two dominant stakeholders, depending on the sector you work with. For example, there are some sectors, the dominant stakeholder is the regulator. There are some, it may even be the consumer or the customers. There are some sectors, it may be the owner. You need to profile where you are. If the dominant stakeholder is the owner, there's something that, you know, I was in a meeting many years ago, you know, and there is a sentence that I will never forget in my life. And that sentence is, the vision of the owner is always served. I'll say it one more time. The vision of the owner is always served. It liberated me. If I have any initiative, any suggestion, I run it through the owner. The owner does it. I try to sell the unique selling points, the short-term, medium-term, and long-term benefits. I will also try to share what we stand to lose by not running with it. However, he's still the owner or she's still the owner, and they are free to say yes or no to a beautiful initiative. And when they say no, I don't give up or quit. I can represent it 3 months later, and I keep going with other initiatives. But if in the long term, consistently, maybe for every 10 change initiative I bring forward, maybe you take only 1 or 2, or you take none, then I will know that I am not in alignment with you. Our values are not in alignment. And I will do my best to transition, to do my research, do my due diligence, so that I don't move from fry pan to fire. Let's do our best where we are. Let's document, engage verbally, engage in writing. We're also developing our persuasive skills. I think we have some questions, 1 or 2 questions. Let me see if it has not been treated already. Abisoye says, how can you convince your management for a need to change, especially when it looks like they are not willing to see things from the HR manager's perspective? That's what we just responded to. That's the same thing our colleague I liked it, and Ifeoluwa responded to, and I added my 1 or 2 cents, depending on the kind of change you are trying to make. For example, if it is a legislation, show them the legislation, send the mail to them, tell them that this is the new act, this is the new bill, these are the consequences. Let it be beyond reasonable doubt that you communicated. If they don't change, if it is something that crosses your own ethical boundaries, okay, then you can pilot your exit. If it is something that is against your ethical boundaries. But if it is, the change is let's be eating beans instead of rice, and they don't agree, it may not be material, it may not be significant. So we should learn to also have a threshold, a tolerance threshold. I'm not saying for negative things, I'm not saying for bad things, but different does not always mean wrong. Okay, maybe a difference in style or approach. If it is not a fundamental error, something that goes deep to your ethical fabrics and foundation, please, then we can tolerate within our own individual boundaries. Oluyemi's boundary may be smaller than Ifeoluwa's boundary. So the emphasis is on your own boundary so that you stay safe. We will take Akin Oderide, but before Akin Oderide, even though I think I've permitted him to unmute, Olufemilayo says, thanks for the presentation. One thing I know is that change is very key, it's very difficult to make in a one-man's business. Resistance to change in some companies mostly come from CEOs. So before you even say you have a change initiative, it means you have gotten the CEO's buy-in. If you did not get the CEO's buy-in or the one-man business owner buy-in, then there's even no change project in the first place. You are still doing consultation. A change project comes when maybe after the management or CEO are signed off on the initiative. All right. Thank you so much, Abisoye. Akin Oderide, please, I don't know whether you are contributing, asking a question or the two, but please go ahead. And this will be the last question or comment we'll be taking today so that we too can change and sleep. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Oluyemi.
Thank you, sir.
And I want to also appreciate Mr. Ifeoluwa for this great session. I would just like to make a little contribution on one of the questions asked here, that how can you convince your management for a need to change? So I've had opportunity to experience some things when certain changes were introduced in my company. One of the things that gave us a hedge is the ability to practically convince the management. What did we do? One of the challenges that happen when people are trying to introduce changes that they are not speaking the management language. Like if management says, this is the angle we are looking at, this is the vision for this period, and a person that is trying to introduce a particular change, the change is not helping the entire organization to achieve that ultimate goal. So definitely the management might want to resist that change. It might not be a priority at that particular point in time. But if you are able to look at, this is the change we are introducing, this is the effect, the positive effect it will have on the company. And when some of the things the angle we can also look at, the value addition. Will it tend to increase the profitability of the company? So if you are looking at that angle, you have to key it in. That's the language that management want to hear. Will it increase profits? Will it increase customer base? Then if you are not looking at that side, with the change you are introducing, will it be able to cut costs? So you must dwell much on the value addition that the change you are trying to introduce will bring and for the entire organization for management to buy in into that change. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Oderinde. That was
Yes, sir.
a beautiful summation, excellent way to wrap up this fantastic session. Ifeoluwa, do you have any closing remarks?
Well, not for now, but let me just say this. In any change we're trying to implement, just like Mr. earlier said, the change has to make sense, right? We have to also look at it from the angle of the management. You have to look at it from what the pocket of the company is even saying. But it's not they're trying to push for a change in salary, at that point in time, the company is even struggling, to even pay the previous salary, right? So when you want to implement your change as a change driver, you also need to think about a whole lot of other factors. How does it affect the company? How does it affect the company stakeholders? These are key things, right? So that's how we all for me tonight. Thank you so much, Mr. Adiosu. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, Ifeoluwa Olawi. We have well over 50 videos on our YouTube channel now. If you listen to every one of these sessions, I put it to you that your career will take a quantum leap. More are still coming, more are still in the works. We believe so much in what we can do for each other and how we can support each other. We will learn so that we can earn. And on this beautiful note, please ensure you have a productive week. Thank you so much. Bye for now. Good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone.